Making an archaeological discovery is often the start of a much longer process. Finding something and understanding it are two different things, and it can often take months or even years before experts gain a full understanding of what it is they've found. Sometimes they never get to the bottom of the problem at all. In our eyes, that makes the discoveries all the more fascinating. Join us for a video tour of puzzling discoveries that have troubled the minds of the world's greatest experts. Historians, scientists, and religious leaders have argued over the authenticity of the Turin Shroud for generations. To true believers, it will always be seen as the shroud that Jesus Christ was wrapped in for his burial, and no amount of scientific evidence will ever persuade them otherwise. Do the blood splatter patterns on the shroud hold the key to this mystery? It appears that they might. In 2018, a new analysis of the bloodstains was performed and found that the splatter pattern was inconsistent with what would be expected from someone with the crucifixion and piercing wounds that the Bible says Christ endured. It's more likely that the liquid was dripped on the shroud by someone who wanted to mimic those wounds, but didn't have an advanced forensic understanding of how blood would leave the body in those circumstances. Scientists have generally believed the shroud to be a forgery ever since a 1988 examination that suggested the shroud is 800 years old at most, and so can't possibly be connected to the life of Christ in any way. The blood splatter pattern analysis ought to be the final nail in the coffin when it comes to the authenticity of the artifact, but we suspect the debate will continue anyway. During the 20th century, British RAF pilots took to the skies above Egypt, Jordan, and Israel, and became the first non-native people to notice the enormous kite-like shapes and lines in the desert. Upon closer inspection, the lines were found to be made of low stone walls, often appearing as angled pairs, starting far apart, and then converging at a central point where deep pits had been dug. Some of the wall and pit structures extend for more than 40 miles. Archaeologists have always wondered what they were used for, but they're currently working on a new theory. They now believe that these walls might be giant animal traps, used to funnel wild game into confined areas, to make them easy targets for ancient hunters. Animals would run into the open areas, cluster together as the walls narrowed, and then find themselves stuck in the pits, where they'd be easy pickings for the waiting humans. The structures appear to have been built around 2,400 years ago, with the pits being just the right size to trap gazelles. If the theory is correct, this is a sophisticated and carefully planned form of hunting that was once thought to be beyond the capabilities of the people of the time. Archaeologists have spent years looking for the tomb of Genghis Khan, but they might be wasting their time. The tomb of the ancient Mongol emperor and mass murderer may already have been found. In 2014, construction workers creating a new road close to the Onan River in Mongolia accidentally broke open a mass grave, within which dozens of skeletons lay side by side atop a large stone structure. Archaeologists were summoned to the site and fully excavated the stone structure, which turned out to be a 13th century Mongolian royal tomb. Their theory is that the skeletons on the roof belong to the slaves who built the temple, and the temple is that of Genghis Khan himself. Because the tomb is so close to the river, its contents are badly decayed. That makes it hard to positively identify its occupants, but archaeologists can say for sure that they found the remains of 16 women, thousands of coins, and gold and silver treasures, and one tall male. Further testing confirmed that the male was between 60 and 75 when he died, and that death occurred between the years 1215 and 1235. Historians are reluctant to certify it, but all the evidence suggests that this is the final resting place of this legendary figure who's revered and reviled in equal measure. There are many unique and unpleasant ways a human being can lose their life, and chronic constipation has to be up there with the most uncomfortable. That appears to have been the fate of the unfortunate individual who was found inside a rock shelter close to the junction of the Pecos and Rio Grande rivers in Texas in 1937. The man's remains were mummified by the arid conditions inside the shelter, leading to an excellent state of preservation. That's allowed for a series of scientific studies to be performed on the body, the most recent of which was concluded in December 2020. That study confirmed that the body is around 1,400 years old, and aside from confirming the constipation diagnosis, it also offered a possible reason for the condition. Inside his stomach, experts found 2.5 pounds of undigested grasshoppers. It seems that this individual ate nothing but grasshoppers during the final weeks of his life, leading to a state of severe malnutrition and contributing to his demise. It might be that grasshoppers were all he could digest because his colon was already so swollen, but it could just as easily be the case that his grasshopper-only diet was the root cause. Mummification is a process that we generally associate with the ancient Egyptians, but they were far from the only ancient civilization to mummify their dead. As we've already seen with the unfortunate constipated corpse we saw earlier, mummification can even happen by accident. Nobody ever intended to create the many mummies of San Bernardino in Colombia, but they exist anyway. You'll find them on public display at Guanajuato Cemetery, and nobody can say for sure why they're so well preserved. It's almost as if the people laid to rest in this town refused to decompose. The strange phenomenon was discovered in the 1950s, when localized flooding necessitated the relocation of the town's cemetery, which required the excavation of the bodies buried there. The volunteers who dug them up expected to find skeletons. Instead, they found mummies, still dressed in their burial clothes and retaining their skin, hair, muscles, and internal organs. It's possible that San Bernardo's high altitude and climate are responsible for the lack of decomposition. But if that were the case, we'd expect to see the same thing happening in other areas with comparable climates. We don't see that, and so the mystery remains unexplained. You'll find ancient and mysterious Mayan ruins and relics all over Mexico, but the most enigmatic is in the middle of the jungle in Palenque. Back in the days when the Mayans ruled the roost here during the 7th century, this place was known as La Cama, and it's the final resting place of the mysterious Red Queen. The remains of this unidentified woman are interred beneath Temple 13, right next to the Temple of the Inscriptions. She was found in 1994, and she's been puzzling archaeologists ever since. Her impressive limestone sarcophagus was found between the skeletons of 2 adults, one male and one female, who appear to have been sacrificed as part of the burial ritual that laid the queen to rest. Beneath the lid of the sarcophagus, everything save for a green funerary mask is covered in a thick coating of cinnabar, giving the queen and all of her burial goods a vivid scarlet hue. Cinnabar was often used as a pigment in Mayan art and is known to have been regarded as sacred. For this person's entire skeleton to be painted red indicates that she was held in extremely high regard, and the jewel-encrusted grave goods can surely only belong to a queen. The secret of her identity is a mystery that's sadly been lost to time. Almost every resident of Upton in Massachusetts has taken a walk in the local woodland to look at the Upton Chamber at some point in their life. None of them are 100% sure who built this artificial cave or why, and nor are any archaeologists. The entrance to the chamber is so well concealed that it's easy to miss it, but once you've found the tiny opening and either crouched or crawled your way along the 14-foot-long tunnel, you'll eventually emerge inside a dark, dome-like structure below the ground. The land the chamber is built into once belonged to a leather tanner during the 18th century, so he might have used this place as a tannery. Many people suspect that it's far older than that, though, and might have been used by one of the farmers who lived nearby in earlier centuries. Perhaps they used it as a root cellar or something similar. However, it probably isn't a coincidence that the chamber was built in alignment with the summer solstice, which might indicate it was built by the Nipmuc people who lived in the region during the 14th century. It's a famous local landmark, but its true history is unknown. While we're on the somewhat unsavory topic of ancient bowel movements, let's talk about a discovery that was made in Denmark in 2014. It's a 700-year-old toilet made from barrels, and it's still full of human excrement. According to the archaeologists responsible for the discovery, the passing of the centuries has done nothing to get rid of the unpleasant smell you'd expect from a barrel full of feces. There are actually 2 different barrel toilets at the site, so this might once have been the ancient equivalent of public toilets. They're far from the most pleasant artifacts a scientist might hope to study, but their contents have allowed us an insight into the diets of people living on the Danish island of Funen at the time they were in use. From what they've been able to identify so far, these islanders ate a lot of fish. While we'd consider these facilities primitive by modern standards, they were probably something of a luxury at the time they were built. They're far from being the world's oldest purpose-built toilets, though. That honor goes to the lavatories built into the outer walls of homes in India and Pakistan 4,800 years ago. In May 1972, in the cloister of San Giorgio Maggiore in Venice, Benedictine priest Pellegrino Ernetti presented to reporters from Domenica del Corriere a wardrobe-sized device, the Chronovvisor, which he claimed to have built with 12 elite scientists, including Enrico Fermi and Werner von Braun, to capture light and sound echoes from any moment in Earth's history. The prototype, composed of germanium antennas, thermionic valves, and adapted cathode ray tubes, allegedly projected before Vatican prelates the speeches of Cicero, pagan rituals, and its ultimate climax, the crucifixion of Christ. Grainy photographs published in that same edition triggered global alarm and prompted the Holy See to dismantle the device and seal it within the secret archives to avoid a moral catastrophe comparable to the atomic bomb. Physicists immediately contested the hypothesis of indestructible historical waves, and later analyses pointed out similarities between the image of the Savior and a devotional postcard from Florence. Still, Father François Brune maintained until his death that the Vatican continues to consult the Chronovvisor for confidential theological inquiries. If each photon truly preserves the memories of time, how many decisive scenes remain invisible, locked away, awaiting a frequency that might summon them back? One of the greatest frustrations that archaeologists and historians face is that many of our ancient ancestors didn't have a written language, and so they couldn't leave behind any written records that would help us to understand their culture. Even in some cases where written languages existed, translating those languages has proved to be difficult. With the supposed written language of Rango-Rongo on Easter Island, experts can't even agree whether it's supposed to be a written language at all. Rongo-Rongo glyphs appear on wooden artifacts that have been collected from all over the island and are arranged in a repetitive pattern that suggests they form words or phrases. What makes this mystery all the stranger is that the artifacts aren't particularly old. The oldest known example of a Rongo-Rongo tablet was carved during the 17th century. The most recent of them was carved during the 1860s. The native language on Easter Island is Spanish, and so it seems that anyone who might have been able to translate these tablets passed away decades ago. How can a language die out entirely in such a short space of time? The London hammer, which is sometimes referred to as the London artifact, is a classic example of a seemingly out-of-place artifact. Discovered in London, Texas, in 1936, it's a hammer embedded in a rock concretion. What makes it so problematic from a historical point of view is the rock that it's embedded in is 400 million years old and appears to have grown around the hammer. That's enough evidence for some people to say that the hammer must also be 400 million years old. From there, conspiracy theorists generally conclude that it's either evidence of time travel, proof of alien visitation of Earth, or a basis for the idea that human civilizations have existed and become extinct on our planet long before the current human era. The tool is of a design that was popular with miners during the late 19th century. It's possible that soluble minerals in the limestone might have formed a rapid concretion around the hammer after it was dropped, thus giving the appearance of being part of the same rock. But until that can be proven, the artifact's existence will remain problematic for scientists. Elsewhere in China, we find the Longyu Caves, which are so mysterious that very little can be said about them with any degree of certainty. They appear to be a creation of the Qing dynasty era, roughly 2,200 years ago. The inscriptions on the walls, however, aren't consistent with the Chinese language of the era or any other known language, and so they can't be translated. Every wall inside the caves is covered in tool marks indicating that the rooms were carved out using chisels. To create something of this size using only chisels, the project must have involved hundreds of people and taken almost a century to complete. Despite that self-evident fact, there's no historical documentation of its creation or any evidence that it was ever used for any purpose after it was built. There are no bones, ceramics, charcoal patches, or any other evidence of human use in the caves. It's like a whole community spent a lifetime building the caves and then immediately abandoned them. With so little evidence to work with, this is a mystery that might never be solved at all. The Baigong pipes of Haishi, China, are every bit as problematic as the London hammer, but they might be slightly easier to explain. Mount Baigong would be considered a mysterious place, even if it weren't for the metal pipes. There's a strange pyramid at the top of the mountain, and 3 triangular entrances are carved into its base. Experts can't agree on who created these structures or when they did. The metal pipes are an average of 16 inches in diameter and led from a saltwater lake to a point deep inside the mountain. They're largely symmetrical and have the appearance of objects that have been placed deliberately and carefully. Only a civilization with advanced metallurgy skills would be capable of producing these pipes artificially, which is a big issue given the fact that they're millions of years old. To add to the mystery, only 92% of the composition of the pipes can be identified. The remaining 8% is an unknown material. There might be an adequate scientific explanation for what's happened here, though. Experts think that the pipes are actually fossilized tree roots, which have undergone a process known as diagenesis that transforms soil into rock. The explanation won't satisfy everyone, but it's the only one scientists have got. Subscribe now and turn on the bell so you don't miss a thing. Fascinating discoveries await you in every video. Thanks for your support. See you soon.